feel like everybody's right and everybody's wrong.
100%. Why is this important? Why are we even going here? He's helped a lot of guys. He's also not had success with a lot of guys.
Come in with a purpose, and they're very intentional with what they do and how they do it.
From the majors to the sandlot, baseball and softball share space in one place. Welcome to the farm system.
Fellas, and the ladies.
Talk to them, ladies.
Yeah, we're back with another episode of the farm. Jurell, we getting the you just coming onto the scene.
Who
that you've been hiding behind the scenes.
Who let us do this?
Well, you know.
How did this happen?
I don't know. I'll talk to the people. You know what I'm saying? The people have been trying to hold you down. You know what I'm saying? Now we got to get you on the spotlight. All right, listen.
Here we are in front of the camera.
Let me give you an intro, a little soft intro. All right. So first off, Jurell is named after Superman's father. All right.
Precisely.
So that's a good intro. That's an intro to start. Secondly, on top of that, business-wise, on the back end, there's so many things that happen on the backside of a farm system. Everybody thinks that we just do lessons.
Basically.
And that's it. We just come in here and do some lessons, and that's the extent of our business. And there's, what is there to figure out? And, there's far more things going on. But the main reason, Jurell, I wanted us, because we talk business so much, obviously, every single day, but I think I get a lot of DMs with people talking and asking about business, because it is something that from a baseball side, like a lot of people, first off, let's go with some basic statistics that I like to say all the time, is again, 90% of businesses fail within the first 5 years. 99% of businesses fail within the first 10 years. If you specifically look into the baseball space, there is a reason that landlords do not like to rent to baseball or any type of recreational facility, because they fail so often. It's also seen very similar in churches and things like that as well, because it's hard financially for people to stay afloat. And so there's something that I think along with this, and also I just want to paint this image from the get-go, is going into this conversation as well. If you're like, oh, well, I don't own my own business, I just want to be a coach, there's going to be so many financial nuggets that I'm sure that are going to be like within this, that again, this isn't a podcast if you only have a business, or also too, you have no aspiration of ever owning a business, because I know there's some people that don't have a business currently but has aspirations to, and you and I, both have had that route definitely early in our lives as well. And so I do want to paint that as well, that there's so many things that even in your own personal life, if you run it like a business, and we'll kind of talk about that, like what that could do for your personal finances and how you're selling yourself, marketing yourself, and all the things that go into that. So, and then the last thing I'll say is, well, not the last thing, the whole podcast, Jurell, but the last thing that
if Joey doesn't speak,
yeah,
that'll be a miracle.
Yeah. What, do we have a podcast? It wouldn't make sense. So we have, I do think the other part with this as well is, you and I have been talking about this, is that we want to have regular podcast where we kind of go through different parts of the farm, where we have, again, when I'm talking with Cody, where we can talk really in depth and kind of go into from a training philosophy standpoint. And that's a big thing I get a lot of questions about. But then I also get a bunch of questions about like how we run our business, and people want to come by and see how we run things, how we structure things, how we've made it, this way, how we've built what we built, why we invested. I get a whole bunch of questions of like, hey, how did you guys afford this? What was your thought process behind it? Let's say like, I'm sure we'll get into things like, like the, force plate or something like that, that is a massive purchase. And why did you choose to do that? And how did you monetize that where it made sense for your business? And then also too, I get a bunch of questions, obviously, in the sense of mentality. I actually have somebody sitting in my DMs right now. Listen, I didn't forget about you. All right, dog. I'm going to get back to you here soon. Is someone was asking me about mentality and like, again, getting into the box and like, some of the things mentally there as well. And again, those side from, obviously we've, at this point, when you guys hear this podcast, you should have also already heard me and Taylor's podcast as well, going to some of that stuff. And then we have a treat coming up where we're going to start doing, you're going to have some podcasting around S&C and sports and performance
New
stuff.
stuff coming,
Yep.
New
stuff coming as well from that side. And then also, I'm sure there'll be specific things, just because we're doing, just a couple things around here, is also specific stuff that has to do with softball, comparatively from the niche of baseball, and all the uniqueness from different cultures in that way. So we hope to see this being more of a regular thing that we can get on, and we talk business so much. And as you know, and a lot of people don't know because they don't hear that side from me as much, is like, it's a massive passion of mine is business. So why don't you kind of just first, so they can understand the audience, like they can understand more of your background, things you've done, kind of there, and then also too from that, walk into some other questions. That I want you to introduce.
I was actually going to bring that up anyways. For those of you that don't know, Joey's also a business genius, not just a hitting guru.
I don't know about all
well.
that. I don't know genius anyway.
No, because when you look at things he's speaking of, what's going on in our business internally, it does take a lot of creativity. It does take a lot of not just evaluating the landscape of the industry, but seeing what's particularly special about your business and how to get it to your clientele in a particular manner. And I think you've been here for a year, and watching you do that, I just wanted to say, one, thank you, and two, thank you for letting me be a part of this. But I wanted to back up and go how our lives kind of intersected in business back in, what was that, 2016, I think,
Something around
2016,
that.
2017, something
Yep.
like that. And so, funny story, when Joey first, so we both work at Planet Fitness together. Sure, you guys have heard him talk about that a few times.
I hope Cody right now in this moment inserts a lunk alarm just going nuts right now.
Boop, boop, boop. I don't even know what it sounds like.
I've never heard it
I
yet.
think I turned it on maybe one time.
We had a button that said a switch that said "Don't touch."
It sounded like a tornado warning.
Oh, okay.
That's what it sounded
That's
like.
good. It's
yeah.
probably not good in Kansas because they probably would just really think there's a tornado.
Yes,
that
Kansas and Oklahoma.
Yeah, that's true.
And while we were there, we were both young, and I got to Planet Fitness about a year and a half before Joey did, and worked through the ranks. And I'm like, I'm the best regional, I'm this and that. And I hear of a guy that had just started and just got promoted. His name is Joey. I'm like, who's Joey? And I'm like, who's Joey? My boss, she was like, he's super talented, this, that, and the other. I'm like, yeah, whatever. And
Not more talented than me.
yeah, exactly what I said in my head.
Not more talented than me.
And she literally goes, I don't know if you remember this. She tells me, she goes, yeah, you should give him a call.
Yeah, I remember your first call to me.
Oh, you should
I
give
was
him a
driving.
call. Yeah, you should give him a call. I was like,
I was on a toll road. And I was running out of gas. Had no gas. Me and you were talking on the phone. And I remember getting gas at this there was one gas station on. And if you're in this part of the country, I was in Kansas and Oklahoma at the time.
don't drive too long with that.
Yeah, because you get on a toll road like that, and these toll roads are not short roads. Like they're longer roads out there, and so. All of a sudden, you have to stop at a toll road gas station. Those gas prices, good thing we weren't paying for gas at that point.
Nope.
But it is something, obviously, again, just a little note there. You get on that toll road gas, they know if you're stopping on the toll road, I got a lock on you. We're going to make you spend some money.
$6.50 for a gallon.
100%. Wait, that's normal now, though. That's normal now. All right?
And go on the phone. I'm like, yeah, hey, man, if you ever need anything, just let me know. I know you're kind of new, this and that, right? I understand what's about to happen in the story, right? And so Joey kind of plays it off. I'm knowing this now. And we have a 5 levels of leadership conference that was coming up. And there were 4 speakers that I knew who was speaking, but there was a 5th one that was missing. And I'm like, who's the speaker? And come to find out, it was the dude that's been working here for 3 months, whose name is Joey. And I'm like, wait, what?
Hold on. Why am I not the speaker? What is going on?
Literally is what I'm saying. I'm like, I'm the best. Yeah. Joey's not supposed to be speaking. I'm supposed to be speaking. What is this? Yeah. And so I actually met him the day before he spoke, and we had our first drink together. And honestly, I don't know if I liked you.
Wow,
at first.
you're gonna let my stuff out like that? Maybe the audience didn't know I drink. I had a drink every once in a while. All right?
And I was like, I don't know how I feel about Joey. I don't know if I like him. I think I didn't like the fact that within 3 months he was already at the same position to me, speaking in front of our CEOs and all of this. And I'm just like. But then, the cool thing was after, hearing him, probably one of your first presentations.
I was, because again, the same thing too. I actually brought that up. It's funny how people perceive something compared to the reality of it is I literally, one of the first things that I brought up when they asked me to do it, I was like, hey, it doesn't matter what I have to speak about. will they hear me? Because I am so new, because I do have the least amount of experience here. Because even too, at that time, I was the fastest one to become a regional. I was only there for 6 months becoming a regional. And then at that point, I'd only had been a regional for like 3 months.
Yeah.
And so I'd only been with the company for like 9 months. And at that point, like my GMs, some of my GMs are 15 years older than me, and they have way more business experience than I've had. And especially with running a Planet Fitness, which I didn't know the ins and outs of, again, there were certain clubs and stuff I had never even experienced. And so because of that, they kind of reminded me of exactly what I do with our GMs is that, when I would come in with the GMs, it wasn't like, hey, I know more than you. It was just like, hey, like, how can I help?
Exactly.
And like, how can I help you do your job very well? And I'm not coming in, and I would say this blatantly to them, just like when I kind of talked with you guys about that, it was just like, yo, like, you guys know way more about being a regional and like all these other things that are coming in. I just have like, some experience that I bring in from sports and also from my life experiences that like from a leadership perspective of like getting everybody to run in the same direction. And so that was more kind of what they reminded me back at that time is like, hey, we're going to do this. I know you're new, blah, blah, blah. We wanted to offer this to you. We know that this is a massive passion of yours. And we think that this would be a good fit for you, especially because it had to do with 5 levels of leadership. If you don't know, has to do with John Maxwell, who is like, I probably read more of his books than I've read of anybody's books ever. And so because of it had to do with him as well, that was also an alignment of, passions as well. But go ahead.
Seeing that after that first speaking event, or assuming, like I said, one of your first speaking events, I think we started to, I saw what everybody else saw. And I think everybody that was there saw it as well. And then 2,
and you can't see it if you don't already have it, so it's okay. They were aware. They were aware because they already had a lot of.
And also too, after hearing where your mindset was and how you thought about things, I was like, we finally got to gain a genuine, true friendship that from work doesn't happen often. I'm sure a lot of you guys can agree. I'm happy our paths crossed there, but what I wanted to stop and point out was the same kind of question that you asked as you were about to speak at that event is, will they hear me because of this, because I'm just started, because I'm young. From my experience being here over the last year, we're kind of seeing some of that same thing with you in baseball as well. Considering the fact of, where you've been in the game and what you've done, like, yeah, you're just 29 years old. But again, the beauty about it is if people could just, again, see your heart, your passion, what you actually want to do for the game, and not just the game, but the passion that you have for helping players, which is the same passion, that we all saw and had to carry when, building a business and helping leaders underneath you, which I think is an interesting kind of place that you're at twice, in 2 different careers, which is cool.
Yeah, no, I think it's an interesting thing, and I think, again, you can have that conversation, I think, without having God, mixed in, because it's such a big foundation, obviously, not only for me, but also I think the foundation of our company. There's so much faith involved with where God has delivered, us from, especially me personally. I mean, I know you guys know very personally, like, again, like how I grew up, where I was born, all those things. And, again, obviously as going through my life, like it isn't the most traditional route of someone of maybe like where they, where I currently sit in the game, or, where I'm seen and events I'm getting invited to and all these other things. And very often, again, that same exact human response that like, you have in those same moments. And, we talked about that as well, of having, it's natural for us to start having identity and achievement and status and some of these other things that we, start to chase after at different parts in our life as well. And I think that it could be a, pretty interesting thing where, again, in the dynamic, just like you're saying, is I think God needed to prepare me for was, I think early in my life, I had to battle through a lot of adversity, really early. And again, everybody had more adversity. Some people had way more adversity than me. Some had way less adversity than me. But again, I think just like how God like put me together, and like how with that, like I was always like a stir the pot,
still doing
shit starter. Like I always wanted to have these challenging conversations. I was everything but a yes man even when I was young, and yes boy when I was young. Again, my brothers would just do what my dad told them to do. Like, I was stubborn. My dad whooped me, and I'm still arguing. Like, I'm just,
the
again,
middle
the
of
same
it.
thing too. Like, I'm sure I was just like, well, if you swing your arm back further, it'd probably hurt more. Like, like I was like, always had that like in me, where it was like that wasn't gonna get me to not do what I felt to do. And I was always the why kid. Again, I'm sure I annoyed not only my parents, but like everybody around me, that I'm like, why? And I like it's always very
Just
critical.
do it, Joey.
Yeah, just do obedient. And I'm like, like,
Why?
no, I'm not blindly following, right? Like, I need you to explain to me why in these different ways. And I think it led down that other path along with it. But I'm always very grateful that I did go, because people talk to me about Planet Fitness like all the time, and I always talk about Planet Fitness in a really high regard because of how brilliant the business model is from a business standpoint. Like, if you have a passion for business, I think it would be very hard for you to go inside their business model and not understand why they make money, not agree with how they do lifting. Like, that's more thinking like a technician.
Yeah.
You're like, oh, this is how I like to lift, and this is fitness, and that is not
Missing
Planet
the point,
Fitness.
yeah.
Like, their business model is such a smart business model when it comes into fitness. I understand why they make so much money. And that's where there's a separation for me also too when we come into business, is because it is different, because I take some of that and then also blend that in where we're more in the sense of, again, like from the more of like an expertise lens compared to general fitness is very different, branches that you're going into. And so, that kind of has gave this like hybrid to our business model that we currently, that again doesn't really exist in the space as much, where again, we're touching so many different audiences.
Yeah.
Where we have things to consume from the general public, but we also offer very high-end services to organizations, schools, things like that as well, that typically people do one or the other, and they hyper-focus with that. And I'm not saying there's businesses that are successful in all of those, right, that are hyper-focused, like Planet Fitness on general public, very high-end expertise and consulting and all of those things that you can get from the very top end. And again, I think we have a unique niche from where we are, where we're this little hybrid kind of in between there, where we get to touch a lot of different people, and not just from a lens of like expertise where I'm just like constantly talking over people's heads, but there's also this other place where, again, connecting with some general audience that is just, my son plays baseball and I never played baseball when I was growing up, and, blah, 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 and like connecting some of those things for some of them too, which is, I think, brings a very unique communication style that it requires for me, because especially now with like social media, when you're talking, and again, I'm reaching like, for a while there, we were going, I had a post at least once a month that was going over 1 million people, right? And to do that back in the day, like, you're playing like, the NFL, it's like Super Bowl or something like that. Now we're doing it from our cell phones. Like, it's crazy to be able to reach that many people. And again, it sounds good. You're like, oh, 1 million views, or 1 million different unique views that people are viewed this. And again, like, along with that is like having that context. We were at Maverick City, I think. Maverick City concert, and then again, my girlfriend had brought up, and she said, hey, like, perspective wise, and then also earlier that year I had gone to a Garth Brooks concert out in LSU, when I was at LSU, and when I was showing her these two different things, both events, she reminded me both times, like, Joey, like, your last post that was like 120,000 like unique people, like, you were talking to a concert amount of people all at once, and connecting with all of them. They all come from different backgrounds, and they all have different perspectives, and they all had a grandpa that taught them this, and a coach that said that, and a this and that, and all these other things. And so to uniquely be able to, it's very hard because we weren't really designed like that as people, like,
to have that much interaction.
Yeah, and also too, for example, like when you're having those, it's like, for me to give you personal advice and us to have, if I'm specifically talking to you and connecting to you, well, me and you are going to talk different, right? Because we have context, we understand, we have a foundation of our relationship. I'm going to say things to you that I'm not going to say to Taylor. I'm going to say things to Taylor that I'm not going to say to you. I'm also going to say things to both of you that I'm not going to say to, somebody else in our business, or again, on the same side of that, or, there's unique relationships that I'm not going to do with like a customer or a client or, a pro client compared to a 12-year-old. Like there's all of this in between. And so when you're reaching, with that, where, you're touching, 1 million people all at once, there's just no way that, you're not going to miss some people, miscommunicate, be misconstrued, misunderstood, all of that. Like and one thing that Maxwell used to say that all the time as well is just like, and he used to say that too, where again, he wasn't getting 1 million, views. Like that's a new crazy thing that we can do, is to say like that is like, he used to say, I'm just not that good of a communicator, and that's a reality thing with me. It's like, it's not that I'm not a good communicator. It's just that I'm just not good enough communicator that I can communicate to 1 million people and touch them all equally the same and be, not misconstrued, not misunderstood, and everybody taking exactly what I said the very first time without any context, without any of those things. And I'm just like, not that good of a communicator. And again, I don't know if I'll ever be in my life to be able to communicate to 1 million people.
Might just be one person that's done that.
Yeah. Just your main man, Jesus, and even him, like, again, misunderstood, misconstrued, how to write a book, how to have multiple disciples to be able to break things down, like, again, along with it. And, actually, a big thing here, not to walk into the spider web, I was actually reading in a book last night, and I thought it was a profound thought, was that, and again, if you don't believe in God, take the meat, leave the bones. So I was like, throw that out there. But it talked about like in God's creation. Well, if God, anything He creates is going to be less than Him, right? It's not going to be Him. He's not creating Him. He's creating something. Any creator is only creating things that are less than Him. But anything less than Him is missing something. And if it's missing something, then, because again, how this conversation got brought into is, for example, like the conversation was around like natural disaster, right? Okay, well, the fall of man, all those other things, right? Our natural sins, how we hurt one another, all those things. Okay, I can understand that, but like a natural disaster, and also too, obviously, let's say, someone's spinning off there going, global warming, whatever they're doing. Like, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about, let's say we never invented a car. Let's say any of those things. Natural disasters have always been a thing, right? Obviously, you can kind of go in then, and we talk about what just recently happened over in Florida, all those things as well, right? So within natural disaster, okay, well, what has man done to deserve natural disasters was the kind of the question. And I thought it was a pretty profound thought, because it opened my heart to another layer of love, is that to understand, he used the example as anything that is less than God is going to be missing something. And if they're missing something, then there's the opening for something else to happen. And the example he gave of this is like, for example, the rock needs to be hard enough for you to be able to stand on, but it's also hard enough for you to stub your toe. Right? Air has to be thin enough for you to be able to breathe it in, but at the same time, thin enough that you're falling through it, again, if you were to fall out of an airplane or something like that, right? Also, too, along with that, like, water, right? Like,
These are bars.
What makes something, again, water and what the nutrition and the value that it brings to our bodies and what it does for us is amazing, but at the same time, it can drown us, right? And so the dichotomy of love that is mixed in there, of understanding that any positive thing seen in the wrong light or put in the wrong situation then becomes a negative, is that there's an appreciation of love for what it is and what it is capable of doing. In the leadership side that came from that is like, humans are the same. Every talent that you have on another platform and another space in the wrong timing, is the wrong person, for that job. And again, that doesn't mean, again, if you're measuring the fish to climb a tree and you go, it doesn't have any value, or, you really hurt some people here because I had the, porcupine walking around giving people hugs or whatever that was, right? Is that, again, we're using it out of context of what it is. And even, again, along with that is like the value of what's coming with it, comes with some faults, right? And the only thing that is everything is God. And so anything that is less than is something, again, that there's going to be pieces that are missing and things that it can't do. And I thought that was a pretty like profound thought also too, of like going in that with like, leadership wise, which you and I share that passion, is understanding that with people is like, hey, and Tay and I actually had this conversation about, I'm a really bad person to bring, when you just had something really exciting happen in your life and you're really excited about this project or how you're going to do something or whatever those things, like I'm typically not your guy, right? And
we know this.
yes, I'm typically not your guy because I'm so critical,
Yeah.
and I'm so deductive thinking, and I'm tearing it apart to figure out where the holes are. Because in reality, to bring it into fruition, these are things we need to think about. And again, we do need to have these conversations. But I had to start learning that when people would come to me and I'd feel like a dream crusher, right? Is that when they would come to me, I'd be like, hey, like I could tell that you're super excited about all these things. I think you might need to go talk to a Taylor. You might need to go talk to a Will Marshall from 108, right? You might need to go talk to these individuals that are going to be super hyped with you and be like, man, I'm so proud of you, all these other things and all these those places, because what makes me so good at how my brain works is also in another setting is also problematic and also can make people feel a certain type of way where they can get these mixed, reviews when they first are meeting and like how my brain works and how I think and all those other things. But at the same time, when I didn't understand that as a positive, obviously most people always wanted to tell me how it was a negative and try to get me to change.
And with every strength, on the backside of a strength, my mentor always taught us, would be a blind spot.
Yeah.
Which is, again, like you just mentioned, something that does make you so good, if not managed correctly, could also hurt someone. And I think if the audience is sitting here wondering, like, what in the heck just happened? And we went from business to what are y'all talking about? Let me help you guys and tie back with everything that Joey just said, because there was a lot of pieces in there. And so I think the first point that you made was, if taking this industry in baseball particularly and looking at, what's me being kind of new to it, what's going on is like, okay, I've taken other business models and other business structures and looked around, not just in baseball of how things are ran, but have gotten ideas of how to run my business from other industries. And so I think that was also point one of, taking experience, people that have done it already and ideas from other industries to make your business in baseball creative. I think the second point that you hit on was identifying essentially not necessarily your audience and how to derive your product or give this product to your audience, but more or less of, is this business model structured to be popular, or is it structured for the target market and audience that I'm trying to intentionally reach?
Yeah.
And like you said, on both sides with us, if you look at kind of what we have of a mixed model, of a hybrid model, of we still are reaching the masses. To a point, we have a resource for you, but when you walk in here, okay, the model is completely different than mass model. And then the third thing, we'll do two more. Third thing was, if you don't have God in your business, put God in your business, was bringing God in your business and having people, and I think not just the God part, but if, like you said, if you don't believe in God, looking at core values of, are the people that are around you have the same values of you and believe in the same things? And the fourth and final thing was how you catered your leadership to who you were speaking with and who you were talking to and how you were interacting with them and how you're speaking and communicating with them. And I think that if you can take those things from what Joey just said, I think that provides a pretty good start and good mix for your business. Again, I just wanted to tie all that back together.
No, good takeaway notes. Yeah. And, and I think the big thing is, again, along with it is that, again, like it, said all a thing too that I've had, against a natural growth thing, and you don't know what it kind of feels like until you've done this. And I'm sure maybe you've done this in another area of your life, or maybe it's been baseball, is you having that thought process. Again, like my brother used to always tell me, it's like people want to see you do well, just not better than them, and again, that's not always the case for every single person, but in large majority, for example, like when I was, Cody and I had this conversation about like, how rebellious some people can be to some content that I put out. And he's like, hey, like I post some very similar content on things as well. Like, why don't people respond as aggressively there? Or even other people that kind of fall in line with my philosophy that I have personally, and where they've become off of my coaching tree, right? And I've trained them, I've taught them, Again, they've shadowed me, all these other things, and they've kind of ran down this, mentored them in some capacity. And like, they might not get as big as rebellion as I might get. And he was like, why do you think that might be? And so it led to a really good conversation. But I think one of the big things I talked about is like, hey, like when I wasn't the guy, I didn't get attacked like that either. Like I was seen as the, again, at the same time, when you go back, like if you go look back historically, like when I was with Eugene out at 108, when he had built a reputation on those other things, and also had again, just like I do with a lot of these other people too, is like I have a much bigger following than some of these people as well. Let's say like, Cody's page compared to mine, right? And as Cody continues to build his audience, well, like you're reaching more and more people. And obviously with more and more people, in the very beginning is you have a very intimate circle of people that love and care about you, understand who you are as a person, all these other things. And so a lot of things you're saying don't get taken out of context. They want to believe the best. All
Early
these
adopters are your supporters.
Yeah, 100%. And then also too, as long as well, is like when you seem to be more in the stage of maybe regurgitation or no original thought, right? You're not really sharing your original opinion. You're just regurgitating an opinion and a training philosophy along with it, is that people don't as much hold you accountable to that because you're not the creator, right? You're not the ringleader. You're not the X, Y, and Z. And so because of that, again, along with it, like there's a lot of people that fall in line with other philosophies, and I probably wouldn't respond to them. But there's also certain guys that are, again, like let's say leaders or influencers or where that is in their own capacity, that there's a certain thing that I'm going to interact with them comparatively to certain other people. And again, along with that is like me realizing that, again, on the opposite side of that is when I was telling him is like, hey, when I started my own facility, when I started, again, like things started popping off, like following quadrupled and all these things started happening, like, then all of a sudden, I even look at it just like, a professional athlete in the same way, right? Like you got away with things. And again, it's not that I'm perfect. I'm a human being like anybody else. Like there's a lot of flaws that, I have throughout my character and personality and all these other things. And people a lot of times don't like to admit those things of like, no, I'm perfect and my character's great and all these other things. Like, no, I'm working on me every single day. Like, what I'm saying? I'm working towards these things. I'm making decisions every single day that are shaping me into the man that like I'm still becoming in those same ways. And so because of that, a lot of times when we have these conversations along with it, it's like, well, yeah, but I'm just living my life, and I'm a human that just happens to be on a stage that there's so many people there that are there to critique, comparatively to your stage being around just people that love and care about you.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be highly more critiqued than anybody else in the same way. And there's also there's plenty of people that are way more critiqued than I am. Again, there's stages to this game as well. Like, you can't deal with your mom and your dad and your friend saying something. Okay, that's great. You got 5 people in your life that are not, naysayers, right? And then you get, again, the same thing. Then you get bigger, and then it's like you get more attention. It's like, okay, now you got, 20 people naysaying. Then you got 50, 100, thousands, tens thousands, like all those things, and where anything happens, and then it's like, and then some guys like hundreds of thousands, millions of people that, do X, Y, and Z along with that. And then, I always, I would take that in as well as like something I always started taking in is like any like, like president or Democratic, leader in some way, like they're fighting for 51% of the nation. And that's a crazy thing to think about. It's just like, it's like more than likely, again, I think the most approved rating ever was like, I want to say like maybe 43% of the if I'm going off the top of my head, but I think it was something like maybe 43% of the nation didn't approve. So like even there, okay, great, you got up to 57%, and I think that I think the most. I don't think that that's even true. I think it's even less than that. But again, and think about that is like even then at the highest levels, there's like how many people were actually going to agree along with like the decisions you're making, all these things, and everything's going to be critiqued. So you can't, and I'm going to do a little plug here for a book that Michael Todd, has suggested and I had looked into, and now I've been reading is, I think it's called Leadership Pain, or it's called Leadership is Pain, something like that. And I've been reading that as well. And again, along with it is just knowing when you walk in the leadership, like if it's not painful, well, then you're not leading. And understanding that like when you are leading and the more you lead, again, the more arrows you're going to have to take. And so,
What does that mean? Because I think you can see that from two different sides where you're at, right? From the business end and in baseball. Because one, you're leading people. We have real life human beings in here working for you. And then two, not just athletes, the parents, the players, the coaches, but a whole industry that you really, in my opinion, kind of, like you always say, staying on top of the shoulders that came before you. But again, kind of pushing that door open and leading the way there is.
My turn to do my part.
Exactly. How do you handle, again, leadership aspect of the leadership pain in both areas?
Yeah, I mean, I think it also comes with incapacity of one, like you have to get over yourself in the same sense, which again, I think people can get mixed signals when they, like, again, by listening to me in the same way. It's like, because it's a interesting place, because I always say, like, for example, if you're going to be president of the United States, you almost got to be a little arrogant. And what I mean by that is, like, some people are like, what do you mean? Like, I don't like that, right? But what I mean by that is, like, you kind of got to be a little arrogant to think that you can make these decisions for so many people.
Millions and millions.
Right? And what I mean by that is, too, obviously your arrogance, right, is rooted in a place of humility of, like, you can't, right? But what I mean by that is, like, you kind of got to walk forward with this, with this feeling of, like, hey, at the end of the day, like, I'm going to do my best. And, I'm going to serve and, this other way. And along with that serving, like, there is going to be, I'm going to fall short over and over and over again. I'm going to learn. We're going to make adjustments, all these other things. Like, I'm not God. Yeah. Like, I'm not, and even then, like, you're still going to criticize, the decisions I make or what I tell you to do. So it's like, again, if that's going to happen to Jesus, that's going to happen to God. Like, how am I to say that that's not going to happen to me? Yeah. And like it or not, I'm going to drop this plug. That was a big thing for plugging Jesus. One of these thing that is big for me was realization. One of the main things that made me start reading the Bible is, like it or not, Jesus is one of the greatest leaders of all time. Yeah. You cannot believe in Christianity at all. Again, the fact that thousands and thousands and thousands, well, not that many thousands, thousands of, of years later, that people are still following Jesus and what he was talking about at that time, and his teachings and all that stuff, it shows. And again, I think that's a remark of legacy of any great substantial leader, along with it. And again, he just happens to have, thousands of years compared to some guys it's hundreds. Again, like Martin Luther King, like, again, you take these leaders, or for example, if you look at, like, a big, like, hero of mine is, like, Muhammad Ali, right? And, like, I have his I don't know why that almost made me cry, but, like, again, like, I have his picture like on my wall, but, like, at the house. And, like, what a reminder me, and the same thing too as well, is, like, he wasn't just a boxer. And it wasn't just about becoming a champion. It was what he stood for, and also too what on the same side, how he affected humanity in the same way with how he went about things. And again, at the time, I don't think necessarily you understand your impact and how God is using you in all those ways. And again, Muhammad Ali, wasn't Jesus Christ follower, wasn't, again, obviously had some different beliefs of what that looked like. But again, God's still using him to affect humanity in so many different ways. And that's actually one thing that Bo brought up to me. A while back ago, was talking about that, as saying, hey, like, some people take arrows, like, for their family, right? Yeah. For their friends, for, their business, all these other things. And, like, it's a whole nother thing where I never really thought of it like that, because I felt like God just put it in who I was, and it never was a conscious thing of mine, is like, hey, like, to push the game forward, you got to take arrows for an entire industry. And that everyone, that there's a large majority of this industry that is, to move forward, like, it doesn't want to change. It doesn't want to change. It wants to stay the same. And it's not that you're wrong. It's just that at the end of the day, and it's not that I'm 100% right either, right? It's just that the fact that when you bring about change, and you do those things, even if you're right, again, you take a Martin Luther King, or you take, again, you take a Jesus, you take any of these substantial, like, insanely inspirational leaders of all time, is that to think that you're going to walk in and be the first one through the door, the innovator, or any of those other things, and that you're going to get out of it and you're not feeling any pain and you're not taking any arrows, well, then you're not leading.
Yeah.
And you're not innovating. And that's just something that comes with the territory. And it comes with the territory. And then again, you have guys like, again, the same thing too. It's like where you have people talking about you and how you impacted them and you've never met them, you know? And, you know, again, like I've never met, Martin Luther King, right? I've never met Muhammad Ali. I've never met, Jesus in that sense, but in a different way within relationship. But my point kind of like with that as well is that the book really talks about that is that I think it's a very interesting book in that same way when you're trying to avoid that pain or you're not feeling any of that pain, or when you don't understand that leadership equals pain, and from that context is that understanding that, again, there is pain necessary to do anything that is substantial, and again, any type of like leadership and any type of innovation.
Absolutely, and it's also a lot of sacrifice as well. Not just sacrificing on a surface level, your time, your energy, but the emotional and mental space that it takes to not just, because as a leader, what a lot of people don't talk about is how consistent you have to be. Because and this is something that I found out early in leadership, is once you have a moment of inconsistency, it's noticed like that. And not only that, but how that moment of inconsistency affects everyone around you.
Plant seeds.
Exactly. And so
or water seeds you've already planted.
And so, it's super interesting looking at
or seeds they planted, the traumas.
Had a few of those moments come up.
Yeah.
But it's super interesting looking at how just that in a leadership aspect of really understanding what you're getting yourself into, whether you're leading or leading an industry, leading people, leading teams, whatever the case may be, really understanding that I think you said this earlier, it's giving up yourself. It's really not about you anymore. I think any great leader that leads successfully is a servant. And I think, again, another bar that you said earlier, it's really your success as a leader is not necessarily of how things are going while you're there, but what happens when you're gone. And so it's super interesting looking at this space and watching just the position that you're at, knowing, getting to see kind of the beginning of the kind of business side of your career. And guys, I didn't even know. I knew this dude for so long. I didn't even know he did this up until, 3 years ago when you started the farm system, that he was so skilled and so talented in many facets of things, specifically speaking to hitting. But it's cool watching this from the other side of the maturation process of you becoming not just already was a great leader, and how that's continuing to grow and how you're continuing to affect people around you, not just in this building and in business, but on the other side too. It's pretty cool, dude.
No, I appreciate that. And again, I do take, along with that is I talk about that a lot with, Jurell in the same way. Like the reason that, again, bringing Jurell on, again, it's not like he has again, his position here of being like a COO, first off, like CEOs, COOs inside of baseball are kind of rare anyways, in the sense of when it comes to private companies and like how they operate. But also along with it, it's also very rare to bring somebody from outside the space to have such a bigger role and obviously how, we do things. And one of the big things, obviously, along with that is the leadership, again, like Jurell, rightfully so, when we were going into those things, like, and again, in all honesty, in the same way, like, I think I think God had taught me that lesson the year prior, and I've talked about that even, where when I first got to the NAIA, like when I had to become, the guy doing charts is, realizing for like the team to win, it's kind of that old quote, like it's amazing what we can accomplish when we don't care who gets the credit. And sometimes you're the dude that gets all the credit. And then sometimes you're the dude that gets none of the credit, but had a massive impact. And again, if you can die to the ego of what that looks like from both sides, I think it also prepares you on the opposite side that when you are getting all the credit of like one, like not wanting it, or that's not the way that like the reason you're doing it for in the first place. And if you're just running off that as your fuel, is like other people telling you how great you are, like it's going to come far in between and it's not going to be enough. So how important that is. But I think also in the same sense of that is, again, when like you called me, I remember that day, the first day you called me, yeah, I knew I was leading the conference. Like, yeah, I knew I was going to do these other things, but also too, like my boss was also telling me about Jurell, who was on the other side and how he had done this. And he has the first most profitable region in the world. And he has the biggest teams and his clubs make the most money and all these other things. And I had the smallest region and my clubs made the least amount of money, but they were very efficient at how much, that they were making for having such a small market and what we were, capable of doing for sure from that side as well. And so there was also like just a mutual respect from that other side of being like, hey, there's a bunch of things that I know that I don't know from here. And, along with that, I think that turns into that other place of like when I come, again, like I had been planting seeds in you, that we had talked about, us working together so many different times throughout. And again, very similar in the sense of how many times I've had conversations even with, Taylor and all those things of these situations. And, if something were to ever come up, and I think that that's like a big thing that I had as well, as like bringing you on and to one, challenge and make sure that I was staying on pace with what I was trying to do, even in conversations. Like, again, it's like almost that devil's advocate thing. It's like, we could 100% agree, but at the same time, let's poke holes in this. And I joke with you all the time about how, whatever side of the fence I'm sitting on, you tend to play the opposite side of the fence, and I do the same for you. Is I tend to play the opposite side of the fence, and then also too, we bring in other voices to play other parts of the fence to make sure that we're spending time, resources, talents, all those different things that again, this is a smart direction of what we're going in. And I was talking to somebody like that the other day about this. Like, again, why do I hire really smart people and then think for them? Like I want them to challenge, what I'm thinking. And again, the moment that I got a whole bunch of like, yes men around me, it's like, okay, we're headed to a very bad spot. And now along with that though, that the hard part is that most people that can't deal with conflict or have this other side of being like, just because we don't agree, doesn't mean like there's a natural healthy conflict that we need to have to really get to where we're going and spark some different ideas of how we're doing things. And so I think that could be a very big thing. But I say all that to say is that because of that, I also needed to bring in a high enough leader in the same way that could challenge me in those same spaces to make me think about things from different lenses that I wasn't currently looking at them from, or I don't get too sucked into baseball culture of how things have always been, and also like what scale actually looks like for this, and challenging, like that dichotomy kind of both. So it does, again, I do take in differently as well, like compliments or things from your lens, just because of the respect, obviously, on the opposite side of like what that comes with. So I think that's big. And I think the other thing, again, kind of just going back into, business as well, is like one of the big ways that I really want to push baseball forward is not just hitting. Also too, how the only way for the whole industry to move forward in a lot of these things, and I hope a lot of coaches here, you can connect with this, is also like financially, baseball is a very tough thing to be dedicated to and to capture some of the smartest and most innovative people in the world, because it's not really rewarded very well because of financial availability. And some of that has to be with some people's passions were so deep into hitting or whatever that is inside of baseball, coaching, all these other things, but they have no business things. And I feel like, again, in that same way, because I have that unique blend of what that is, and like I have a passion, I don't have to like try, like I really like doing business stuff. It gets me going. And again, also too, on top of that, if you think I'm passionate about like hitting, I really do love hitting, but again, I spend majority of my time doing business stuff. And I do love hitting, but like hitting also too, like it become taxing at times, and I do a lot more business stuff, and I think even businesses could be even a deeper business and leadership might be even a deeper passion for me than hitting. So again, if you think I'm super passionate about hitting, you should see that other side. And then the last thing I was going to add with that as well is that just the understanding there is like to push the entire game forward. We need to get better on the business side, and we need to set a new norm of what it looks like to be innovative, to push the industry, how it will be rewarded, how you can monetize these things. And then now as the new ceiling is set, that then opens up the entire bottom of the industry where there shouldn't be guys in professional baseball that are making less than 10 grand a year. There shouldn't be guys in baseball, in professional baseball, that are coaching an entire season that are making $20,000 a year. And, and again, there's coaches out there that have been coaching for 10 plus years that are still scrapping for all these things to stay in the industry. And it turns away so many bright and amazing minds within the game there as well. And so that's another byproduct of, again, unintentionally, again, raising that ceiling of, hey, I know it hasn't been done this way, but it doesn't have to be this way. And there is, we can bring in this insight from other industries and say, hey, and again, and when I'm talking with other business leaders, that do have businesses inside baseball, again, when I'm coming from the private sector is we can have real business conversations because again, I can break down to them hey, business perspective, you're doing this and doing other things. Again, you're going to go pay somebody else, 60 grand out of, college or whatever to come and do X, Y, and Z for you. We're actually providing 3 times that value and this is blah, blah. And we can go into those things and actually have real conversations about things that I'm actually passionate about. And actually again, on the other side of have some logic from the other side of I do want to help your company. And also for us to help your company, I'm going to want you to best steward your money. And let me tell you the pros and cons of each. We provide a service here that is going to save you time, money, resources, all these other things. And we're both going to win. This is a win-win here. And not because I'm trying to sell you anything. I'm bringing awareness of hey, I think I'm advising you that I think that this might be a better way to spend your money. So that, everybody wins. And then if me and you both win also too, the industry is also winning, which again pushes the game forward. So there is so many more ways than just one way to push the game forward. And again, I think that a lot of times those other ways can get, shoved down because people are so focused on hitting. When if my only job, if at the end of my life, I'm only known as a hitting coach, well, then I feel like I failed. Because that's not the abundance of gifts that God has given me and granted me with, that it wasn't, and never was just purely hitting, and that isn't the only thing that fuels who I am.
No, and I think like you said, wrapping up, in order to do that, and I think while you were speaking, I was thank you, Holy Spirit, because something hit me. I was okay, you're doing that almost on both sides of the spectrum. It's how many people in baseball are hiring 2 people to help lead the organizations that have little to no experience in baseball or softball. And the thing about that is, to the regular person, that doesn't make any sense. But when you look at, again, bringing in different perspectives, bringing in different ideas, when you have a different viewpoint, if you're staring at, almost like when you're driving on a highway on a road trip, and you're going 85, 90, and then you get back on regular roads and, going 40 feels completely different. When you get that different perspective or perspective shift, I think it allows, 1, more creativity, and 2, opens up a whole spectrum of ideas and business opportunities that the industry may have missed just because, again, everybody who's in it is in it. And the same things are happening. And maybe some, tweaks here and there, but ultimately, like you said, to really push the game forward, to really change or promote change, there has to be, a big, I don't want to say a gap, but almost a complete difference in, well, if everybody else is doing this and you're doing this, how do you separate yourself?
Yeah, you're if you're going to try to get in the business by trying to compete with Walmart, by being Walmart, they're going to beat you.
Never going to happen.
Yeah, and so, the same thing too. For example, another thing that it wouldn't make sense. Again, Taylor, for example, Taylor is responsible for a majority of our sales that we make with clients. And again, collection of money and like all these things. And like as little to no sales experience. And even, her, when like we brought her in, just like, okay, you want me to be responsible for these other things. Like this is
what?
not my skill set.
Yeah.
And I'm like, but you don't understand like what sells, that what actually sells is who you are. Your character is what will sell us. How you connect with people is what will sell, because we more doing the same thing. Like I don't ever feel like I need to hard sell anybody.
Yeah.
Like what we do from a marketing lens and the value that we provide and all those other things, from there, like you're just another resource for them to get what they're already looking for and the express value that we've already had. Like I don't need someone that has hard sales experience, because I'm not trying to prove my value to anybody. And that way we're playing bigger game of like, again, the same thing too. We give out so much as well. And again, like without very little asked for in return in that same way. Is that again, like I don't need somebody with really hard sales skills. Is there some sales techniques and some certain things that would like really help with certain situations? Like, yeah, okay, we talk about those. Like, again, like I do have some sales experience. Like, okay, we've done these things. Like, Jurell, you've had some sales experience. Like we used to do these, again as well. Like we had clubs that were making millions of dollars a month, and all these, and what that looked like from a customer relations side standpoint. But again, even Planet Fitness, they were very like they're not hard sales. Like it is very the same thing. They go very similar. And really smart marketing campaigns, how they connect with their audience. Everything's very soft. In that same way, you're not really selling to anyone. You're just making them aware of their options, and then also too connecting with them so well. You're doing such a good job on the marketing side and the value standpoint from the very front. And again, value from their price points and value what you bring. That again, like. If I need to hard sell you, then I've done a bad job in other places. Or again, maybe it's not time for you to come in because you're not going to value so much. You don't see as much value that it needs to be there as well. So that's a very different, unique in like spin on those other things, where I think some people really feel like if you feel like you need to really hard sell, my kind of argument on the opposite side would be that you probably haven't expressed enough value. And if you're trying to express your value or explain your value to someone or fight for your value to someone, I feel like you're already in a losing battle. And like, instead, you need to do that not directly, but indirectly by giving more to the industry and kind of, again, like the earn your stripes thing is just like, it's not a thing of like so much just purely off of years. Like, oh, I've been in the industry for 20 years. Yes. But on the same sense, okay, you've added value to your players year in and year out, all those other things. It's a whole nother thing within the industry as well. When you're touching millions of people on a consistent basis, of the value that you're bringing to so many different people, that can be done in a shorter time range, where it's like you're touching, these 20 kids every single year. And like what that does with you is, again, like a great feat for sure. But there is something different where, again, you're able to touch. And again, just like when people write books, just like when they do podcasts, just like when they do all these other things, is again, providing more value and more ways to be consumed. That again, along with that, then it becomes a byproduct of people wanting, and coming to spend business money with your business. And that's a very different mindset than just like, oh, what service do we provide? Well, they do this too. And it's like, well, yeah, I can offer the same thing as Nike. Like Nike's going to make more money than me, even if we, put the same amount of effort into something, because of all the other effort that they've done and the value that they've brought in so many other ways. And I think it's a different spin. A different spin than how a lot of people look at, trying to gain clients within their business. Like, we lean obviously more on how much value can I provide you? And again, even if as expensive as our rates might sound for some of our other stuff, it's like, I promise you on the other end that like I'm saving you 3 times as much money than if you were to go do this yourself.
Exactly. And I think as we're talking about these things, and the next time we sit down and talk, going over, how do you communicate your businesses to other businesses, culture, hiring, leadership. I think even, from a coaching standpoint, I think culture and leadership is probably the biggest thing. And so, yeah, man, I think we got some more to talk about.
For sure. Yeah, always will, for sure. But no, yeah, I mean, that's the good thing is, like, again, this is obviously a bigger passion of mine. And like the fact that along with it, like we kind of go into some of the social media stuff. Yeah. Like I started wanting to do like some more business stuff because it is such a massive passion of mine. I feel like when I'm not expressing that passion, it's like, again, like hiding or burying, we were talking about in Bible study last night.
Gift.
Burying these other gifts or something that, again, I love talking about. And I get sometimes I can get pigeonholed into talking about hitting. But again, Cody said that, but we always talk about that a lot too. Is like, I've said this with the conversations around with like Justin Stone, when Justin Stone was, we were talking about, it's like, man, if you were just a good hitting coach, like there's no way you could be at the level that you're at. And the same thing, with us, of like, if we were just, just good at, these things that, like, again, the business wouldn't exist. Farm system wouldn't be a thing. You wouldn't know what it is if I was just a good hitting coach. There's so much more that comes into that to actually has a successful business, and what that comes into, and like obviously the value we could provide the people. We're gonna dive into more of this stuff too as well. Again, I'm sure there's nuggets here. Share with someone that, again, especially on the business side, and you guys have the communications or have those relationships, definitely different. Some different things. I'm sure there's some nuggets in here you guys can pull from, or something you can say I'm an idiot about. So I'll share that too. All good.
Never that.
If you're still watching, you're a fan, right? It's all
right.
Good. So in any case, grateful for you guys again tuning in, and again having seen some of these different views, and want to touch on a lot of different subjects. And I thought this one would provide a good amount of value for you guys, and we'll continue to do this throughout week in and week out. And also too, we might increase our podcast output quite a bit because of how many different podcasts that I want to start doing. So in any case, hope you guys found some value in this, and until next time, Farm System out.